Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satgurum Pranatosmyaham. So far, we have analyzed the status, the ontological nature of the world, and we have established that the world enjoys a dependent status. And the way that verse 72 has established that is by stating that the world, if it truly were to be real, this whole manifest universe, including time and space, if it were to be real, it could never disappear. And it does disappear, a sense of time, a sense of space, all that disappears in the deep sleep. By this, it says, thus it cannot enjoy an absolutely real status because it is negatable. And that which is real, it cannot be negated in any way, through any state. It is what's always true, through and through all states. So, and then it equated that very world, thereby it is like a dream, asat swapnavat mrsha, because just like a dream, depending upon the waking, and it goes away when, right, waking has to go away to give chance for the dream to thrive. The dream has to go away to give deep sleep a chance, and the waking also depends on both the dream and the deep sleep not being there. So all three, however you look at it, depend upon each other's displacement for them to get their chance, their shot, their one time, one opportunity. And so, unlike the three states, that self is that which doesn't depend on the appearance of some state or the disappearance of some state to give chance for awareness to be. Awareness cannot be displaced by any state. And so then this is reinforced now that we know that the world is a mere superimposition, as we have analyzed, like a snake upon the snake upon the rope. The world being like that snake upon the rope, and we stated that when the knowledge takes place, it is not like the snake disappearing. The snake remains, the world remains. Just the ontological status of the world changes, and that happens cognitively. So while for one person the world is still the world, it's an absolute reality worthy of pursuit and worthy of dying for and living for, for the wise person, you still continue doing the exact same things as before, according to your strengths and weaknesses, according to your dispositions and your personality. But there's a certain composure, a certain kind of a relief and clarity that now I'm no longer moved, to attend so many things in this world that are all worthy of attending. They're not worthy of attending. They may be for somebody else, but for you, they are just things. And now the next verse wants to show, having understood that this superimposition has no absolute reality, your meaning towards things changes. Verse 73. Ataha pratak na asti jagat parat manaha pratak pratitihi tu mrsha guna divat aropitasya asti kim arthavata adishtanam abhati tata brahmena. Therefore, the world is not separate from Brahman, whereas the perception of the separateness of the Jagat from Brahman, that is false. Like the snake superimposed on the rope. It is due to Mithya Tvam, Brahman appears as Jagat. So due to mithya, due to not recognizing that every object has this dual aspect about it. It has a satya mithya. Not knowing that everything has a satya mithya status, what's your only chance? To look at an object as mithya, which is actually mithya, but it's to you it is satyam. And thus you want to preserve what is for you satyam, but since satyam is actually mithya, it disappoints you. Because all you know as an eternal being, the most precious, the most valuable is that which never changes. But due to the lack of the knowledge of that which truly never changes, my only chance is to superimpose that which I am onto that which I am not, onto mithya. And thus we start to look for permanence in impermanent thing. Try to look for perfection in imperfect things. Try to look for holistic in that which is never holistic, because holistic means it is complete of itself. And so all these attributes start to present in our personality traits, seeking for the savior, seeking for someone perfect, seeking for the perfect relationship, for the perfect body, for the perfect mind, for the perfect intellect. This is because of taking the superimposition, which is temporary by nature, taking it as a permanent thing. And thus, naturally, due to this mithyatvam, the person will come to a certain point of suffering. So what's Vedanta's job? It is to take you out of suffering, because why does, in the light of what we have learned, suffering occur? What is the product of suffering now that we have established the Satya-Mithya relationship? How do you suffer? How do you become an expert at suffering? Please teach me.
Is to take one thing and give it lots of meaning, and then due to time, that same thing doesn't give the meaning.
Yeah.
But I cannot stop believing that it will give it to me.
Super, super. So in other words, having been taken this superimposition as real, because you want to hold on to something, we all want to hold on to something that's solid and stable. We hold on to something which you cannot hold on to. It's like soap. It slips you. And so, consequently, to hold on to it and to give yourself some hope that it's going to last and save you, you give it meaning, value attribution. We give it coloring. So we start to color the world. We get a blank canvas and we spray paint it. My savior on your face, my savior, all my life. And you say, wake up in the morning and you go, you still have that little my savior. Where's the at the end? Oh, it's no big deal. Tomorrow and 2 days later you wake up, my savior. Oh, it's no big deal. And my snake. Okay? Little by little, that which I was depending upon starts to get chipped away, and I get so used to it that I then say, no, it's okay. I'm going to give you one more meaning, and I'm going to again spray paint my bestie, my better half. So constantly, but eventually you run out of spray paint, don't you? Because that's how it's made. This is Ishvara's system. You cannot go for too long until you run out of that energy, that constant need to make meaning from the world. And eventually, when I've given so much meaning, I've spray painted so many words over your face, then there's nothing else to, because your face is now all covered up. And so I go, I have a need to continue spray painting something else now. I'm bored, or there's no space to write something on you. So what Vedanta's job is to take you out of this value attribution onto things. So let's make this a little bit more real. You see, is there something in your life now that you might be putting value onto naturally, that is meaningful for you, and whose well-being, if it were to be another state of non-well-being, it would disturb you? Okay? That's the one who you might just use this knowledge and reassess your relationship. That ultimately, end of the day, as close as that person is to you, you really have no relationship with anyone. So again, what is that fallback? that is keeping true with the knowledge that when you remind yourself, that fallback works for you. It doesn't deny the situation, it just helps you to look at it more objectively and keep your mind clear while still attending to what needs to be attended to. What is that fallback? You said, I am that witness. Lovely. Small things like this. I am relationshipless. I have no actual relationship. I have no partner. I have no husband. I have no wife. I have no child. I have no knowledge of anything. I have no ignorance. I have no lightness or darkness. I have no attributes whatsoever. I'm free of this entire show. You see, knowledge is only for the jiva. Self already knows who it is. You don't need to tell the self, here's who you are. Self always knows it is as I am, as that which is self-evident. So ultimately, no matter what happens in my life, I might remind myself, this is just a grand show going on for a long time. And for the time being, I am one of those characters, participants, fictional characters, who has to do my little part for as long as I'm alive. But through and through that, let me remember, I'm not stuck to this. Nothing taints me. Nothing touches me. No one is really hurting me. No one's really giving anything to me. No one's really taking anything away from me. I cannot be reduced, nor can you add on to me. You can never make me bigger nor smaller, no matter what happens. Death, thank you, but you cannot touch me. Life, thank you, but you cannot add anything to what I am already. And so while life lasts, I bring you into my life, and I acknowledge you, and I do what has to be done. But nothing that happens here at any time in the past, present, or future will ever have any bearing on you. So this is the vision of Vedanta that makes you free from the concerns of the world. But ironically, it makes you more involved now because you're more clear. You're less worried. So the quality of actions increases. Because before, there was always this meaning, I have to attend this, and I have to not do this and do that. Just relax what has to be done, find that purpose, and throughout that discovery of your purpose, do what has to be done. But know that even the person who's finding his or her purpose, you're even free of that person. Like a dream, I tell you, hey, you know what? Last night I had a dream thought. And it was a dream story. And I went and I drank dream juice. And I had dream food. And I went to the dream mountain. And I looked at the dream panorama. And I talked to dream friends. And I was crying because one of my friends fell down the mountain, and he was my best friend. So I called up on my dream phone a dream helicopter, and it came. And I went to the dream hospital, and dream tears started to pour. And I saw the dream monitor go flat. And then I experienced a dream grief. And that's okay. It was the appropriate response. You did not say, this is all a dream. You knew it was a dream. And you responded properly. You do have your tears, moments of tears. You do have your moments of concern. You do have your moments of worry. There's nothing wrong with that. Vedanta does not say, stop. This is not Advaita Vedanta. You might call it pseudo. So I do participate in this dream, but through and through all of that, I know quietly, it's not a loud pursuit, quietly, with a smile, that inner smile, I'm free from this. And thus, knowing that this superimposition is just a superimposition, you no longer give it so much satyam meaning, because it's not satyam. It is just a passing moment in time.
What is Jagat?
Sorry?
Jagat?
Jagat is universe, time, space, and all objects in time and space. That's the Sanskrit word. And by the way, what are you giving meaning to, I wonder? suppose you're very attached to this pot now, okay? You're very attached, and I break this pot because your grandmother gave this to you, so it was very special to you, and I break it, and then you're very upset at me. What are you getting upset at? The pot? The clay? The sand? Because you are getting upset, so you must be getting upset at something. So I'm just wondering, what are you getting upset at? Which one of those? The atoms? But in reference to suppose you miss the pot. You miss the pot. You're not angry at me, but you miss the pot. Like I'm really curious. What is your grief in reference to? Is it the meaning that you've attached onto this? So this was serving as a adhishtanam, and you project adhishtanam, the substratum, and you projected a meaning. So your grief is not in reference to the pot, it's in reference to the meaning you gave it. You see, when somebody passes away, it's often we're not grieving for the person, we're grieving for the meaning, what they meant for me. Now they're no longer going to be there. So this is what we call a subjective superimposition. Now, we're not saying this should stop. This is normal. But the difference between subjective superimposition and a grief of objective grief, is that objective grief is natural, right? It doesn't last for too long. Now, what happens is sometimes a subjective grief comes in, and then you say, oh, what will I do now? And, where will I find someone like that again? And look how life is just disappearing before my eyes. So you start to add this extra narrative onto a simple event, which has happened before so many times. Even today, how many people have died? Many. So it's okay to have grief objectively, but also if that objective grief turns into subjective grief, that turns into depression. Because what happened now is I've superimposed so many things onto us that it really just affects you. So this has to be discerned. At what point am I grieving for the person, and at what point am I grieving because I'm making it about myself? So this is what it means to deal with this superimposition. We're not saying you don't have emotion now towards the world, or dismiss it, or deny it, or pretend like I'm above all of this. I'm not above anything. This is called humility. Humility means you are allowed to express your emotions. You're allowed to have your moment. You're allowed to be angry. Imagine your body is saying, I'm angry, because anger is connected to a sense of justice. So when you see someone that's not doing something right and they're close to you, naturally you will show some anger, maybe in your voice. Now suppose you say, no, I shouldn't be angry because this is all just mithya. See, even though factually it's mithya, the point is what has shown up? Mithya anger. And what is the response? Mithya response. It's simple as that. I don't have to deny mithya, because wherever there's mithya, that's where satyam is. So it's not like by staying not angry, I'm going to remain established in myself. Your anger has no bearing on you. Which means you're allowed to be the same person as before. Just cognitively I recognize it has no real bearing on me. But it doesn't stop you from being someone who's just weird, strange. So this is the art of how do I now navigate, having recognized the Satya-Mithya relationship, how do I express it in the real world, just like anyone else, but with a certain amount of mental composure.
What you might get angry might change, right? Once you have this knowledge. You won't get angry for silly things anymore, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's what I assume that change happens, that's the knowledge.
Exactly, and more so than that is if you bring it even more down to earth, you see, the people that are doing, that are close to you, suppose they do something that's not righteous, okay, and it hurts you, naturally happens, then you don't even have to use satya-mithya. In fact, most of the time, the person won't use satya-mithya, because in that moment, when you're in that heat of that moment, who goes, okay, so this is mithya, wherever there's mithya, there's satyam. Nobody does that, okay? So rather, you can just recognize this is their journey. Everyone's got to go through this journey. And you are in that moment connected to them. The best thing you can really do is just retain your own, protect yourself, protect your own mind. Because the moment you allow your mind to get entangled in their stuff, now you got two people who are entangled. Before you had one person, now you got two people. So this means at a practical, empirical level, I still have to set some boundaries. Reach out, and I can do what I can do. I can say, I can do my part. Even if you don't listen to me, I still walk away saying, you know what? I've done my part. Because if I didn't do my part, I would have walked away feeling guilty. That in me, there's so much advice that I want to genuinely give and reach out. This is a natural byproduct of you loving somebody else. You want to reach out. And you just see them there and say, this is their journey. I'm not going to do anything. How will you feel then? Not right. So this means despite having this knowledge, I can still look at them and say, they're going through this. What little part can I play in reference to the relationship that I have with them? And then give them that space to make up their own mind. Now, if it's affecting you deeply because they're very close to you, within the family, then again, you have to be sometimes firm and set those boundaries. Because even if you have the satya-mithya relationship, knowledge, you know how that moment can still penetrate your mind. And when it does, there is no satya-mithya, there is no Vedanta, there is just same old responses you've done before. So what would you have to do, in what manner would you have to conduct yourself that you can be amidst those hot moments and retain your sanity, retain your intellect? That means even when I lose my mom one day, this is your journey. Everyone dies. You will get another chance. I know you're not gone. I know you will get another body. Yeah. You see? This is what carries you forward. So this is what we mean by knowledge transferring itself into practical real life application. So I encourage you to ask yourself, or to, not once, it's a constant inquiry, how could I navigate this journey while incorporating Vedanta? That's the whole point. Otherwise, there's no point of this class. So again, when we go home, in what ways could I incorporate something that I have learned here through and through my transactions with my spouse, my partner, my child, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister? What is that one thing? And I tell you, if you just bring that one thing starts to grow into many more things.
Because I think after some time you are in Vedanta, it's going by itself. You don't need to incorporate Vedanta. It works by itself.
It works by itself. It takes its own momentum. Yeah. It works in the background. Yeah. Initially, there is this journey of, like I said to you, pull out the phone. This was my initial method. I pull out the phone literally like this. Something happened. I look at Notion, open the tab, angry, emoted, or judged. Open that and go, okay, so this person doesn't know everything about me. They do not know my life. They do not know my background. They do not know the facts. And based on this, they superimpose this unfair image onto me, and thus they were rude or whatever. And I go, okay, let me think about that. And that immediately brings that emotion down. Now, having done this so many times, you don't need to do it again. It's automatic. So now they say, how do I bring this into my life? That's an example. Having concluded this section, we're now entering another section which is Tat Tvam Asi, Mahavakya. And this will help us to see that your identity and identity of Ishvara is one. Verse 74. Tat Tvam Padabhyam Abhidhiyamanayoho Brahma Atmanoho Shodhitayoho Yat Itham Shrutyatayoho Tatvamasi Iti Samyak Ekatvam Eva Pratipadyate Muhuh. If Brahman and Atma, indicated by the words that and you, are analyzed in the said manner, the oneness of Brahman and Atma, Atma is the self, alone is repeatedly well pointed out by the Mahavakya, you are that. What is the purpose of this verse, of this section? It is to analyze this statement, which puts this entire course into one short statement. That's why it's called Maha. It's the great statement, a statement that condenses all the teachings into a single line. So the word Tat can refer here to Nirgunam, can Brahman, awareness, attributeless awareness. You can also refer to Ishvara. It doesn't matter. And the word Tvam refers to, Tvam means you. What do you think the word you is referring to? Try again. The word you. You are that. Jiva, okay, who thinks that they are this physical, mental composition. So the jiva who is loaded with 5 koshas. So to that one we say you. The one who thinks I am as good as the 5 koshas. So to that one we say you are actually that. You are that Brahman. Now the purpose of this statement is to remove a contradiction between you and that Ishvara. So initially you say, well, I'm small and Ishvara is big. And now you're saying, I, the small being, am that, the big being. I am God. How could you say that? That's not true. Because God is all knowledge, all power. But I am, as an individual, limited knowledge, limited power. I can't even lift up 100 kilograms. God can lift up a universe, an earth. So how can you now say that I, a limited individual who has an 80-year lifespan to live, am that which is immortal and vast? Now, this statement has a huge history to it, because depending on who you expose the statement, you are that, will depend on how they get interpreted. So, for instance, in the karmis, those who do things in the karmakanda section of the Vedas, those who follow actions in the Vedas, will turn this into what's called the upasana vakya. This means that it is to be meditated upon. So I will tell you, because my whole life is about action, do something, do something. So now I will tell you this Mahavakya and I will say, Tat Tvam Asi, come here. Okay, Guru. Tat Tvam Asi, Tat Tvam Asi. And then you walk away and you say, Tat Tvam Asi, Tat Tvam Asi. You are that, you are that, you are that. You come here. Aham Brahmanasmi. Okay, Aham Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. So what they think is, they turn it into what's called a sadhya vastu. It is an object to be accomplished by a constant repetition. If I constantly repeat Tat Tvam Asi, what's going to happen? I'm going to get punyam, and punyam is going to lead me into heaven. Again, it depends on who's interpreting the statement. Whereas Vedanta says it is siddhi vastu or siddha vastu. Siddha vastu is no, this is not a statement that is to be accomplished. It's not an object to be accomplished. This is a statement revealing a fact to be known. For example, water boils at 100 degrees. That's a fact to be known. It's not a matter of doing something about it, like putting your finger in the water. Just know it, because knowing it is itself the result, will give you the result. Whereas if I'm an upasaka, if I do karma, then for me, that statement is just an action. And if I do an action, I will get a result. And if I do that action, I repeat that statement for 20,000 times, I will get 20,000 years worth of heaven. If I repeat it for 21,000 times, I'll get 21,000 years of heaven. So even if the first statement were true, that it's an object to be meditated upon so that you can go to heaven, is it really worthwhile? Because even if you spend your whole life meditating upon it, you will only get a limited amount of heaven, and then you will come back. What's the point of that? Just shifting, hopping up and down with a rocket. A rocket full of fuel called punyam, and then when the rocket empties itself out, it falls back down. So it is, in Vedantic terms, it is not a sadhya vastu. It is not an object to be accomplished. Now furthermore, Dvaita will say, not say Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. They will say Tasya Tvam Asi, you are of him. See that statement? You are of him. You are his child. That's a perfect statement for Advaitam. And thus, as Advaitin, I will teach you, Tasya Tvam Asi, you are of him. So do your puja, do your worship, do your bhakti, be dharmic, and one day when you die, you will attain him. And you will be with him. Tasya Tvam Asi. And you say, okay, that sounds very good. I like that. I want to retain this identity of a small individual, and that appeals to me. And so I like the language when you say you will be with him. Because that is how I've been living all my life. I always live with someone that I love. And so after death, I will be with God, someone that I love. See that carry over? Well, Vedanta says this is not how it is. What you have to do otherwise is to establish not a literal meaning of this statement, because the literal meaning doesn't make sense. How can a small individual be compared to a vast Ishvara? How can that be? It's a total contradiction. So now we have to answer this contradiction that the Almighty, all-pervasive, omnipotent, omniscient will never be Alpa-Shakti, Alpa-Jna, limited knowledge and limited power. You cannot equate the two. And the verse 75 starts this inquiry. Aikyam tayoho lakshitayoho na vachyayoho nigadyate anyonya viruddha dharminoho kadyota bhanavoho iva raja Brityayoho kupa ambu rashyoho paramanu mervoho. It says the oneness is said between their implied meanings. It is not said between the immediate or the literal meanings of you and that, which have mutually opposed qualities, like the glowworm and the sun. How can you say that the glowworm equals the sun? Or the king and the servant. How can you say that the king equals the servant? Or the well and the ocean. How can you say that that little amount of water is equal to the total ocean water? Or an atom and a mountain. So what is our direct experience of ourselves? We're like a glowworm. tiny fragment in this creation with a limited time span, and the Lord is like the sun. Little bit of consciousness, a little bit of lightness, little bit of brightness, and the Lord is like the entire sun of brightness. You know, Krishna in was it chapter 11 of the Gita, he said, I am like 1,000 suns. I am as bright as 1,000 suns. Now see, the sun that we look up, this is very weak. This is like 0.5%, 0.001%, because it has to penetrate a distance and an atmosphere. We're looking at 0.01% of the brightness of the sun. Huh? 0.01. Imagine just seeing the full brightness of one sun. It's unimaginable. It says, I am like 1,000 suns. And now you're comparing me, a little glowworm, who can hardly be seen from 2 meters away. You're comparing me to that sun. I can never be the sun. The glowworm can never be the sun. The servant can never be the master. The created can never be the creator. So what's going on here? Now the meaning or the solution, he says, is when the literal meaning doesn't hold up. Literal meaning. What's the literal meaning? I am small, Ishvara is big. That's the literal meaning. When the literal meaning doesn't hold up, then you have to turn to the implied meaning. Lakshyartha. For instance, suppose I say to you, hey, the room is noisy. What's the literal meaning of that? The room is noisy.
Well, the room can't be noisy, but the people inside the room are producing the noise.
Ah, okay. So the room is noisy, literal meaning, the room is producing noise. But what did you really mean when you said the room is noisy? The people in the room are making that noise. Suppose we say Australia is playing cricket. What's the literal meaning? A continent is like with a big, giant, enormous earth mass bat. But what do we really mean? People are playing cricket. So the literal meaning cannot hold, but the implied meaning holds. So now we have to apply this using what's called Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana. This is a common method of discarding one part and maintaining some other part. So let's see. Let's take the word you, Tvam. So what we have to do is we have to discard all attributes of you. What do we say that you refers to initially? The 5 koshas. So let's get rid of the 5 koshas, or the body and the mind, the 3 bodies, the physical, the subtle, and the causal. And what have we established by this neti? What have we established that we cannot negate? You cannot negate self-awareness. Now, when I negate this, is this mindless negation? Is this just saying, no, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind? Are we doing this mindlessly? No. Why not? Because we have performed a thorough Panchakosha Viveka. So it's no longer mindless. So this is not, just say, you're not the body, you're not the mind. I'm not the body, we're not saying that anymore. So I've discarded all of those because they're all not self. And what is that which cannot be discarded? Awareness. Now let's look at the word tat. Tat or that. So what do you have to discard with that? That refers to Ishvara.
Total physical and subtle body.
Okay, we can also discard the macrocosmic, the virat, or the physical, the total physical, the total knowledge, we call it Hiranyagarbha, we call it subtle body. And we can also discard, what's the definition of Ishvara? No, it was, remember, it's Sarva Jna Sarva Shakti, all knowledge, all power. If we have discarded limited knowledge and power, here we discard all knowledge and power. And what do we get? What cannot be discarded? Yeah, again, you cannot discard that which it depends upon, which is awareness. Therefore, you retain the final cause and you get rid of the superimposition. You get rid of the upadhi. So what's the only difference then between you and Ishvara? Think about this question. What's the only difference between you, whatever you means now, because we have discarded all those things that you are not, and you have a right to awareness, and we have discarded Ishvara's upadhi, which is all knowledge, all power. Then what's the difference between you and Ishvara? There's no real difference. But then at what level is there a difference? At the upadhi level. But that upadhi, the truth of that upadhi is none other than awareness. Because there's only awareness here. So let's give you a little metaphor. Suppose that you have a wave in the ocean, and you give this wave a brain and eyes and so on. So it's kind of strange, but it's there. And this wave says, I am. And the ocean, the entire ocean says, I am. Now, on the basis of what could the wave say, I am? On the basis of the water. On the basis of what could the ocean say, I am? The water. Could the I am at the level of the wave refer to anything other than water? Could the I am at the level of the ocean refer to anything other than the water? No. So on both sides, they say I am. Though one is the whole, one is also the whole, the only difference is the temporary upadhi that's taking place for a moment. But their essential nature is exactly the same. Now suppose that you understand this as a wave, and you're not, would you be bothered now, knowing that I am small, but my true nature is water? Will you be bothered by that? No. But suppose you don't have this connection, and you say, I'm small. You see what happens now? You are small. Because you have no way to return back to your nature. You have no way to relate to the whole, to God. You have no way. There's a separation. So as a wise wave, you acknowledge there is a being for the time being. There is a being, the whole, Ishvara. And there I am, a small being. But at the same time, there's no essential difference between us. And they're just both upadhis, no more, no less. Now, what happens often is, you see, Vedanta is not saying that I am the truth of Ishvara. This is a danger. It's like the wave saying, I am the truth of the ocean. Look at this. For how long has your I been referring to a small entity? Beginningless time. So now when the person hears this, they say, oh, I am the truth of the ocean. What is that I going to likely refer to even when they have knowledge? It's still going to refer to a small wave. Even if you get the knowledge, because your I am is so ingrained in that small entity, if you start now saying, I am the truth of Ishvara, what you are really saying is, I, the wave, the small little being, and the truth of Ishvara. So now, Vedanta corrects this. It says, no, don't do this. Rather change your language. I and Ishvara enjoy the same truth. Can you see the difference? Not I am the truth of Ishvara. It's almost like an arrogant statement there. But rather, I and Ishvara enjoy the same truth. This is much better. Because now you cannot make this mistake of sort of in an unconscious manner pushing Ishvara aside because I am the truth of Ishvara. Like two things. You see how we used inclusive language? I and Ishvara enjoy the same truth, known to us as I am. So now how does a wise wave live? Well, does the wise wave put itself above the ocean? No, because as long as the wave is vertical, it still needs the ocean. At the empirical level, it still needs the ocean to live, to conduct its transactions, to live a good life. Therefore, a wise wave respects differences, acknowledges differences, but also recognizes the sameness. There's no question of putting oneself superior or inferior. There's no question of this. Respect the differences. One still has a relationship with Ishvara, as before. Still, you are my protector, you are my guide, you are my everything. But at the same time, you recognize one more truth is you and I enjoy the same reality. I'm never outside of you. For the time being, this upadhi is manifest as a small being called my name, and for the time being, the upadhi is manifest as the whole called Ishvara. It's just an upadhi. The essence is the same. Look at this. Even if you were Ishvara, so what? So what? Because your truth is still the same as one individual. You see this? Because both are upadhis, they both resolve into the same satyam. The analysis continues in verse 76. Conditionings are different and unreal. This is exactly what we're speaking of. Tayoho virodha ayam upadhi kalpitaha na vastavaha kaschit upadhi eshaha ishasya maya mahat adi karanam jivasya karyam shirnu panchakoshaha. So the difference or contradiction between the two is created by this upadhi. There is no real difference. Maya is the upadhi of Ishvara, which is the cause of the vast universe, whereas the five sheaths is the upadhi of the jiva. So, knowing this, where is the conflict between you and Ishvara? Where is this whole thing of Ishvara is bigger than I? Where does this come from? In the light of this knowledge. At the level of upadhi. That means I'm taking the upadhis as absolutely true. And then he uses an example. It is like a costume of a king and a costume of a servant. What makes a king and a servant? What happens when I take that costume away? Are they now a king and a servant? Upadhi. It's the same being underneath. You just put an upadhi called king with a big crown, and suddenly everyone bows to you. And then that same being puts ordinary clothes. Now nobody treats you well. You're just a servant. You're the same being. So the upadhi changes so much, and yet underneath nothing has changed whatsoever. And on the basis of this, it then follows up. It says, Ishvara's upadhi is Maya, which is the cause of the whole cosmos. And that makes consciousness, that upadhi makes consciousness take on the role of all knowledge and all power. Look at that. Maya makes, due to Maya upadhi, that means the upadhi of all knowledge, all power, that's an upadhi. All knowledge, all power upadhi makes consciousness appear as all knowledge, all power. That's why you say consciousness or Ishvara, he is the Lord. Why? Because of the Maya upadhi. It's just consciousness. It's just one reality, one awareness. Because of the power in that awareness, when the total upadhi manifests, called Maya, then that very awareness now you call Ishvara. But conversely, when you take the 5 koshas upadhi, and that 5 koshas is just the countless effects of that Maya, like a tree is an effect of Maya, a bird is an effect of Maya, 5 kosha is an effect of Maya. When you take the 5 koshas upadhi, then it makes that same awareness appear like a small jiva. Reason for the entire universe is because of Maya. Reason for this person is because of Maya. But Maya has no reality apart from awareness. So what's the difference whether you are the whole of Maya or whether you're a small little individual? They're both upadhis. They both have no reality apart from the self. Now, of course, for the time being, being small, there are some disadvantages to that. You don't have all knowledge, all power. But you can still provisionally accept. It's okay. For the small moment of time, I'm going to accept being a wave. I can appreciate the ocean, the Lord. I'm going to accept being the wave, and I'm going to play the role of the wave. But my truth and Ishvara's truth is one. And when this wave collapses one fine day, in fact, before the wave collapses, does that mean that the wave is going to, now that it recognizes its truth is water, does that mean it's going to experience itself as all pervasive? No, I'm glad you said that. A wise person doesn't experience themselves all pervasive. Why not? Because of the upadhi. So for the moment being, for the time being, this upadhi is as though limiting this space inside. But the space is all pervasive. So the wave can enjoy itself and say, it's okay. One day when I crash, as I will in a couple of years, that's called your prarabdha karma has come to an end. Then, only then, can this all-pervasiveness take place. We call that videha mukti. While there's moksha and a person knows their nature, there's still a sense of limitation. You can appreciate that, but it's not real. It's only temporary. Only when the wise person drops their body, now I am everything. In fact, I was everything all along. But experientially, while vertical, I was not experiencing my nature as all-pervasive because of the upadhi. Only when the upadhi leaves one day, then I am still exactly the same self as I was while wearing an upadhi, but myself, the experience of myself, is now all-pervasive. Therefore, let us not be fooled by this idea of trying to look for all-pervasiveness while the upadhi is going on. Suppose you have consciousness plus Maya plus Jiva plus, that's enough. Consciousness plus Maya plus Jiva. How many totals are there? How many is that? This is a trick. Consciousness plus Maya plus Jiva. Let me throw in an extra Ishvara. Equals how many? One. Okay. Why one? Because anything other than consciousness is an upadhi, and upadhi is mithya, and wherever there's mithya, that's exactly where satyam is. Good.
Can I also say infinite? Because consciousness is not limited to anything, so it's infinite by nature, and consciousness plus jivas is also infinite because there's no limit to the expression of jivas.
Of course, that's another way to look at it. But I want to show also that there's only one being whose nature is infinite.
Is it a good example to use the actor and his different roles as an example for superimposition?
Yeah, so different roles are... See, you're free of your roles. If you were stuck to any one role, then you would be that role forever. So the roles are a superimposition upon the actor. The actor is always free of the roles. Yeah, so this is why they use this in the scriptures sometimes.
So you can use it for the same, because here is written superimposition in 73, and then you go on with upadi. But it doesn't matter when you use the word.
Yeah, you can still, for general purposes, you can use them safely as the same word. Okay. Now, of course, you see, there will always now be someone who say no. There's, the academic style comes in. The academic approach comes in and says no. Upadi specifically means that which, as though, borrows attributes onto something else, right? So the spot is as though borrowing attributes onto the clay, but it's not really borrowing because it has no reality apart from the clay. Now, superimposition is a different kind of model when you use the snake and the rope. So they have a slightly different model change, but for all purposes, because I don't do this whole academic approach, you just put it down to earth, superimposition, upadi and atyasa. So now let's continue with eliminating the conditionings, the upadis, verse 77. Etau upadhi para jivayoho tayoho samyak nirase na paraha na jivaha Rajyam narendrasya bhatasya ketakaha tayoho apohe na bhataha na raja. These two, that is Maya and the Pancha Koshas, are the upadis of Ishvara and Jiva. When their negation is done, there is no Ishvara and no Jiva. The kingdom is the upadi of the king and the shield that of the soldier. When the removal of these two is done, there is no king and there is no soldier. Okay. So let's look at this again. When Maya superimposition takes place, then awareness as though becomes Ishvara. Is this clear? When all knowledge, all power, which is a superimposition, when that is superimposed on awareness, then awareness as though takes on the Lord. Okay? Now when that Maya 5 sheaths, because 5 sheaths are just Maya, remember? When the Maya 5 sheaths is superimposed on awareness, you have that same awareness appears as a Jiva. Okay. So now, and then it says, the reason why this unwise person suffers is because they simply have this lack of upadi knowledge. And so they will start to compare. And when you get rid of the superimpositions, you get rid of the titles. So what it says is, when you negate Maya, upadi, then the title, Ishvara, is stripped away. When a title Ishvara is stripped away, it says na paraha, then Ishvara vanishes, because Ishvara is just a superimposition. You stripped away the title. Ishvara is just a title. It's just a superimposition on consciousness. So you strip away Ishvara, you call it, not Mr. Ishvara, but you strip away Ishvara, you have consciousness. You strip away or you negate the 5 sheaths, and the title Jiva, not Jivaha, also goes away. Now, to help you see how we create these titles, then he uses the example of the shield and the king. So I'll give you a different example. Suppose you have a policeman, and the policeman is standing in the road, and the policeman is wearing a police clothes, and he goes like this, and he stops 1,000 cars. Why are they all following his direction? Because of his upadi uniform. So all his power comes from the mere upadi. So all power comes from not awareness, it comes from upadi, which is why we call this upadi all knowledge, all power. And that policeman can strip that upadhi. That means it's subject to change. And what happens? That power is gone. Therefore, all values, worldly values, such as king, soldier, it's just the same being. You remove the king's clothing, the soldier's clothing, it's just one single being. All worldly values are due to upadhi. And all spiritual values, such as jiva and ishvara, are also due to the upadhi. And so what we are really all talking about is mithya. Just mithya upon mithya upon mithya. So to whom do you give power to? To awareness or to the upadhi? All power goes to the upadhi. Awareness is attributeless. You cannot call awareness powerful. Powerful is an upadhi of maya. We said the only way to understand awareness is that which is nirgunam, without any attributes whatsoever. Now the question is, how do I bring this non-duality into my real world experience? And Adi Shankara had something nice to say about that. He says, you see, I know that my truth and Ishvara's truth is one. In fact, he said it even more directly. My truth, I am the truth of Ishvara. He said like that. I am the truth of Ishvara. It doesn't mean his body. He means my nature, which is the nature of all things, is the truth of Ishvara. But I still go and pray to Ishvara. Why? Because I still have a relationship. As a human, carrying this human being body, human emotions, a human mind, I still have a need to relate to some being. And so I can know that I am the truth of Ishvara, but at the same time, I go and pray, and I still go and attend the rituals, and I still go and perform my puja and bhakti. And then you say, why are you doing this? You're the truth of Ishvara. Why are you praying? And you say, you fool, because this is what a healthy mind does. Me praying to Ishvara, I am praying to none other than myself. There's only me here. To whom else am I praying to? And while there is a wave in the ocean, the wave has a need to still relate to the ocean. That is just human nature. A Swami can own an ashram, and the Swami teaches, my truth and God's truth is one. But then the Swami that day does a rudram, does a puja, does a ritual for Ishvara. Oh Lord, bring light into our lives. Oh Lord, bring beauty and health. May our minds be illumined with your grace. He can even do asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyoti gamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. May our minds be illumined from darkness into the light. May we go from mortality to immortality. And you're saying, you fool, what are you doing? No, I'm not a fool. My mind is healthy. I still relate to Ishvara while alive, while understanding that my truth and your truth, Lord, are one. And so the person can now live with a certain amount of composure. They're no longer feeling small or isolated or like it's a random universe. They understand that for the short moment of time, an upadhi difference is there, and I respect that. There's no space for arrogance or pride. And that's the healthy journey of a wise person. Now, when we return back, then we will come to appreciate how the rishis have used logic to arrive to this bhaga tyaga lakshana, to decode what Tat Tvam Asi means. So far, I told you a very direct approach. But then you will come to see through logic how much it takes to even come to the implied meaning of Tat Tvam Asi. This will come tonight. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.